Hey everybody, welcome back. We're looking at my first, well, not my first, but my main squeeze computer that I used for over a decade. I called it my command center, Urza's command center, if you will. Loved this case. I loved it for the lock, but I love the ease of putting everything in here. It had great space for hard drives, IDE and SATA, and honestly, just one of my favorite machines I've ever ran with. But when I moved in 2020, I went to fire it up, and wouldn't you know, it wouldn't even power on anymore. So we've tested the power supply on other machines. I removed it out of here to use it for other machines, and that's good. So we know it wasn't a power supply issue. My next guess is good old processor here probably no longer functions, which the socket should be fine. And I've got plenty of AM2 compatible processors we can swap in here. Also want to go ahead and clean this up because, as you can see, it is, this is just a sample, just filthy in there with dust from years and years of being, well, used and neglected, honestly. It's got a great multi-card reader. Really was a nice system. When I built this in 2008, I dumped a bunch of money into it, so it lasted for a long time. The only thing I've ever changed out is this graphics card here, which the original I had in here, I don't even remember what it was, but I wanted to play The Sims 3, and the one I had in here was not compatible, so I swapped with a buddy of mine who had this one, which is a looks like a 1 gig DDR5. I think this is a NVIDIA GeForce of some kind, but we'll pull things apart, take a look at our components that we have in here. We've got our trusty USB rechargeable duster, and of course, good old-fashioned toothbrush, some compressed air, Windex if we need it, although this board looks like it doesn't have any stains or corrosion from bad caps or anything, so I don't think we'll need to really get too in-depth with cleaning. And honestly, we're just going to strip this case out, blow it all out, get all the dust out, check our fans to make sure they're still working. I think this big 5¼ inch in the back was kind of on its last leg. Luckily, I've definitely got replacements for that. And as always, when I'm at the recycler, I like to grab a few extras out of old cases that have no usable parts otherwise. So if I need a couple smaller fans, I can definitely utilize that. And I've got, of course, the old power supply, which we can definitely get in here too. And then we can see what we can do with this little rig. Like I said, I believe this was running Windows 10 when it finally did bite the dust, so still a perfectly usable system. I know DDR2 memory is fairly old, and it's an old build, but, you know, low-end machines, retro gaming machines, you can do a lot with a little. So let's get started and get this thing cleaned up. Okay, so first things first, before we start pulling components out of here, I like to just give everything a great dust off, just to basically clear out as much of the ambient material as I can. And in this case, we've got so many years of growth. Before we start using the brush, I think we're going to go ahead and use the other attachment, which is just like a cone, to focus in and blast out as much of this as we can. Now, the nice thing about this rechargeable is that we can use it over and over and over, and we're not wasting cans of aluminum compressed air. The compressed air is nice if we really need to get targeted, but I found a toothbrush works just as well for that. So in lieu of spending like $8 a can or however much the compressed air is these days, I highly recommend one of these. This is just a cheapie off of Amazon. It's nothing really to write home about other than that it works. So let's get started. Oop. And you can see, I mean, just, I don't know if you're getting the haze that I'm getting, but it's pretty thick in there. And the battery on this is actually about dead. And I just noticed that the vent on the back could use a good clean out. So we're going to go ahead and recharge this. And since we can't dust right away, let's just start taking components out. Okay, so first things first is we're going to go ahead and remove the graphics card here. And this is a nice, easy case to work with. No screws involved. We can just pop this out, and just for the sake of dusting in the future, I'll go ahead and loosen everything here. Now you can see down below we've got some USB ports. Those, I believe, actually came with the board. It's not really going to be critical for what I'm going to end up probably using this for, but we'll probably keep that with this case just for fun. But let's go ahead and pull the GPU here. And get a look at what we had running in the system back in the day. So it's a Sapphire. I believe this is a GeForce card, if I'm not mistaken. HD 6750, 1 gigabyte GDDR5, PCIe, HDMI, DVI, and DisplayPort. So pretty nice, actually. Little PCIe. 1 gig, that's not bad, actually. That's probably one of the reasons why this thing remained relatively usable for so long. But this thing is just caked with nasty dust. So we'll definitely have to get that cleaned up. You can see it's got Crossfire technology on this Gigabyte board. We'll get a little bit closer here so you can see just how amazingly primitive this was. But it boasts USB 2.0, which was fairly complex at the time, and it did have 6 SATA ports on the board here, you see, as well as full IDE compatibility, so you could really do a lot with this. Interestingly enough, it does look like it's got two PCIe ports on it, which was probably more than I was ever going to need on this board. But really, honestly, this is a great motherboard back in the day. So the question is now, how far should we really take this thing down to get it cleaned out? In my opinion, this thing has been so dirty for so long, I think we pull everything. So I'm going to start by pulling out the memory. Probably shouldn't pull it out like that, but see, we got some Slimline Kingston DDR2. This is 667 megahertz, so not taking full advantage of the capabilities, but it was a nice little set for the price I paid. I believe I got this at Circuit City just before it closed for good. And I actually still find that RAM in the salvage yard all the time. So it was fairly popular stuff. But again, just caked with dust. And probably, honestly, again, the reason why this decided not to work was all the dust and dirt and debris buildup. And then I believe this is a 4 gigabyte kit that I started with. So once we get that all cleaned up, we'll be testing out other RAM just to see how much performance we can squeeze out. But I definitely want to pull this fan, pull this processor, and then probably just pull the board itself out of the case so we can get this all cleaned up.